Hey everybody, Viktor here, and for today we have a nation guide for QuizQuiz. Now before I get into QuizQuiz itself, however, I actually have to talk about something else first, specifically the mechanics of playing a North American tribe at all. The reason why, there's actually two different kinds, the migratory nation and the settled tribe. So let's go into those mechanics first. Now the first type of native tribe you can play as is the migratory tribe. The migratory tribe is the one province tribe that can migrate. Seems pretty simple. Now the way this used to work is you would get free monarch points every time you migrated. On top of that, the migration cooldown time depended on your stability, where the less stability you had, the faster you would migrate. So -3 was the best thing you could do. So most guides simply said, declare no CB wars, get your stability to -3, migrate across the continent, generate a lot of free monarch points. Now, however, that's not how it works. Now it costs 50 military points to migrate. And you can migrate immediately thereafter, bouncing back and forth between provinces at will, so long as you have the military points. The only exception to this is if it is somebody else's tribal land. As you can see here, Yadkin is controlled by somebody else. If I migrate into their land, I cannot migrate into their land again, nor can I migrate into anybody else's tribal land, meaning I have a 2-year cooldown at that point. Now, if it is my land, I can still migrate right back into it, and I can on top of that migrate into non-claimed land. So if you want to move yourself to the other side of the continent, absolutely. Just be sure you're aware of where you're going, so you end up not going into somebody else's land, and then being mad you can't continue. So you end up just kind of skirting it, not going through the heart of it. Next, as you can see here, this is non-claimed land, which means the trade good hasn't spawned. Once I move into that land, it will randomly roll, based on what was available, and determine what the trade good it should be. If I move out, it removes the trade good, which means every time I migrate in, it has a random chance to assign whatever is there. Now, if I like whatever it spawns with, say grain, I really wanted more grain provinces, I can use my admin points right here to add it as tribal land. Once I add that, I can then move out of it and it will remain a grain province. Now, the amount of points it takes an admin to add tribal land goes up the more you have. On top of that, over here at Kusabo, it needs to connect, which means if I want to add this as tribal land, I have to have these two provinces as well, which is where war comes in as a migratory tribe. If I attack Iswa, I'm just going to call them Iswa. If I attack this tag right here, and I take all their actual provinces and their tribal land, all of it will be added as tribal land because you can only ever have one province until you either settle down, which is the other type of native tribe that I'll talk about, or you either form into a horde, a monarchy, a republic, or a theocracy. These three require you to have feudalism embraced, which means you're waiting for somebody to colonize, get it to you, so you can embrace feudalism and move on. Horde, however, that doesn't require feudalism. It requires you to stay a migratory tribe, so you cannot settle down, so you have to stay as a one-province miner, and you have to reach military tech 6. So if you're playing a migratory tribe, you don't have to settle down, you can become a horde. And what this will do is all of your tribal land here will instantly be converted into a full province for you. So there is a very good advantage to you expanding as much as you can as tribal land before you do anything else. Lastly, you will get the benefit of your tribal development here as if it was development in your capital. However, you can't use it any other way. That is for if you settle down. Which, now let's go ahead and talk about when you settle down. Now, Kado here, they're a slightly different type of tribe. They are a settled tribe. This means that they can no longer migrate, as you see here. It is now settled. The advantage, however, is that while you can no longer migrate, you can own more than one province, which means if they attack their neighbors, they can actually make these settled lands into actual provinces, not into more tribal land. On top of that, instead of migrating, they settle. And for 50 of each monarch power, and at least 1 in the tribal development, it adds whatever your tribal development is, so 1 in admin, 1 in diplo, 1 in military, to this province and actually converts it into a province. So let me show you here. I have 3, 2, 1. I'm going to add 1, 1, 1. So it's going to be a 4, 3, 2 for 50 of each monarch power. Meaning I am now able to actually expand without war. Now on top of that, as you can see, I have no other tribal land. But any non-claimed land that borders an actually settled province, I can add as tribal land. However, as you can see, the price is substantially higher. Here, it's 360 admin points to add my third province, whereas if you recall with Tuscarora, their fourth province was 120. The reason why is right here under Settled Down. Settled Down triples the cost of add tribal land. Now, the reason why this is important is because, as should be clear, it is more beneficial for you to start off as a migratory tribe, add as much land as you possibly can as tribal land, and then flip over to Settle Down once you can no longer either add more land yourself or really conquer any more without massive coalitions or problems on your border. So Settle Down is for later stages, and some of them start off that way. Here's the thing. If you wait until you get to 50 reform progress, you could swap out as long as you only own one province. Which means if you start off as, in this case, Kato, if you no longer want to have the extremely high cost, you can do that. You simply have to wait until you have 50 reform progress, which can take you quite a bit of time. And then swap out to either Warband, for morale of armies, or to seasonal travel, which makes it cheaper for you to migrate and gives you a lot more tribal development growth that you can eventually throw into a province once you are ready. Now that all of that's been said, let's go ahead and get the keys and what I recommend for you guys to get your achievement. Now when it comes to keys, you start off as a settled tribe. That means it costs you a lot extra to add tribal land, but the good news is the two provinces that aren't settled near you, they're already claimed as tribal land, so you can't even do it anyway. Now here's the thing, if you wish to become migratory, it's going to take you about 7.3 years to get the government reform to do it because you get 0.62 every month. That does not mean you cannot expand though. Here's the thing, in order to jump out of settled tribe, you cannot have 2 or more provinces. Tribal land does not count, and you can steal tribal land, and it will remain tribal land. You just cannot take actual provinces. What does this mean? It means basically, if you attack Chickasaw here, before they settle these 3 provinces, you can take them from them and it will become your tribal land, and you can still become migratory. So if you are fast enough, go ahead and attack people. Just do not take any actual provinces, and you'll be fine. Now that that's said, let's go ahead and move on to your ruler. Your ruler is going to be completely randomized here, both in terms of monarch generation and personality trait. And both of them are equally important, especially on whether or not you're deciding to re-roll your start or not. Here's the thing, you are a totemist. That means whenever this ruler dies, you can add whatever that personality trait is as a permanent buff for your country for 400 Diplo power. Now, since this guy's aggressive expansion impact reduction, that means while he's alive, it's -5. When he dies for 400, I can continue that on forever. Now, a lot of people are going to say, okay, I still want him to live because then I don't have to pay for it. But you don't know if the next guy is also going to be another one of these. And then I can have -10% aggressive expansion reduction, which can be huge early game, or mid, or whatever you happen to be. For example, if it was morale, I would want him to die, because then I can get the morale and fish for a second morale guy and have Native American Space Marines running around. So even if he happens to be a garbage ruler, this trait might be still fine to continue playing with, just hoping he dies. Because then you can add his benefit here and fish for not only a better ruler, but a great trait as well. Just wanted to point that out before we begin any further. Now let's turn our attention to the military. Now your military is stupidly simple. You're going to take your army, add 3 infantry. Now if you have a ruler you want to keep alive, recruit a general and assign him. If you have a ruler you want to die quickly, make him a general and assign him instead. And that's it, you're done with the military. Now let's go ahead and talk about diplomacy. And welcome back, everybody. So unfortunately, in the middle of my recording, my dog started barking, and that meant I had to restart the game and recording all over again. So now, this is my ruler. Nothing else has really changed. So let's talk about diplomacy. Now, when you are a North American native tribe, your starting diplomacy is slightly different. You see, instead of finding allies, you have federations. Federations are defensive alliances that do not take any diplo slots. So they're the first thing you need to worry about, and most tags do not start as a member of a federation. But at the very beginning of the game, before you unpause, you can start your own. And you usually start with 1 to 3 people willing to join it. So before you unpause, invite everyone you possibly can. As you can see, after the first one is formed and joined the federation, everybody looks at you and goes, "Wait, you have a federation? I want to join." So again, before you unpause, invite as many people as you can. Get your diplomats back and invite more people that you can. Now, some of them are going to be rivals of each other, so eventually your list will get shorter and shorter and shorter. On top of that, some of them will end up joining other people's federations, so they will drop off the list as you go along. But just get as many people as you can, and preferably people in this area, because they will be in the same culture group as you are. The more they're in this culture group, the better off it'll be. The reason why is how federations work. You see, you start off with 50 federal cohesion, but if they have the same culture as you, it goes up by 0.1 per month per tag. Each one that is not the same culture group as you goes up by 0.05, and any of them that are quote-unquote stronger than you decreases that growth by 0.2. If it reaches 0, it simply generates the strongest person as the new ruler, or the leader of the federation, where they get morale of armies and diplo rep bonus. So you want to be the leader. Now, this is what's important. As long as you are getting positive growth, in my case, I'm getting 0.21 every month. Once it hits 100, I can take one of these advancements. The one you need is right here, Enable Federation Offensive Wars. Again, a federation is a defensive alliance. It does not take a diplo slot, but all of these guys are instantaneously called in on a defensive war. If you have this, they'll be called in instantly on an offensive war as well, meaning there's no favors. They can't even refuse, and neither can you once it is passed. So if I attack, say, Chickasaw right here, I attack them, all of the Federation comes in. Every single member. This is why you want as many people as you possibly can in your Federation, because you're building your very own Zerg swarm. Enough to make the Overmind cry. Now at this point, I need to wait, because I need to wait until this is embraced, and that'll take about 2 years at this rate, and it's going to be varied depending on how many people you get, if they're the same culture, etc. But it's going to take me about 2 years. Now again, people can drop off. However, if you look at the actual invite to the Federation, if I can find somebody that's not in it, if they're already in one, it'll tell you in here they can only join after 5 years have passed. So they won't be leaving your Federation for 5 years. After that, they might if they don't like you anymore. So if you expand too fast, if you're too aggressive, etc., they may bail. Lastly, you can finally get your own 3 independent alliances. But be aware, there is one downside to alliances. Namely, you get a truce if you break them. If I kick anybody out of my Federation, there is no truce. Which means I can use my Federation to expand, and then once I'm bordering somebody in my Federation that I want to expand into, I kick them out, I attack them, I take all their stuff before they can respond and join another Federation. And this is important if you're playing QuizQuiz. Now, for those of you who are aware, yes, there is an achievement somewhere in here that requires you to be QuizQuiz and have your capital in Anjou. There it is, right here. It requires you to be QuizQuiz. If you do this reform, this federal constitution, all Federation members are integrated into a new tag. In other words, you will become the QuizQuiz Federation. You will not be QuizQuiz anymore, which means you cannot get this achievement. So you cannot, if you're going for that achievement, click this button. You can get all the other 7, just don't get this one. Now, if you're not going for the achievement, go for it. You get free land. Why not go for it? But if you're going for the achievement, expand, get to the point where you're going to take out your allies' land, kick them out of the Federation, and absorb them too. Until you're the only person in there, and then you don't even have a Federation. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, because I need to wait until I have this Unified Warbands done, and then I can actually start doing things. So I will see you guys in just a little bit. And welcome back. As you can see, I have finally hit the 100 Federal Cohesion, allowing me to pick one of these. I wanted to point out that this icon is going to be what you look at. You cannot exceed 100, but you need 100 to pick something. So once you see this pop up, come in here and pick something, otherwise you're losing Federal Cohesion. And the other thing I wanted to say is, because I'm not sure if I pointed it out before, if you look here, you'll see strength. The manpower strength is simply the maximum manpower that you have. So when you look here, it'll say Ishisi is stronger than the Federation leader, so I'm losing 0.2. That is because their maximum manpower is 10,670, whereas mine is 10,500. So if you have a problem where people are stronger than you and you're losing too much, go in here and see if you have a guy in here for maximum manpower. Because if you do, you can hire him, and that does boost up your strength, which will help keep you as the leader. In this case, though, time to go ahead and pick this, and it's time to start expanding. Now, if you want to expand and still get to the Migratory in here, because it's not going to be a point where you can actually flip to Migratory again yet, what you can do is just take out these provinces. The tribal land is still available for you to swipe, you just cannot take actual provinces. So in this case, I can attack, I'm not going to even try and pronounce it, but I'm going to go ahead and go after him. Now what I wanted to point out is, if you notice, Kaski here, they're on my side in my Federation, but they're allied to my future enemy. However, here's the thing. Federation is more important. Because he is instantaneously called in, he is called in on my side of the fight before he gets the defensive call to arms. So he breaks that alliance with my enemy and joins my side. So be aware of that, because you might find somebody that is allied to one of your Federation mates. Go ahead and attack them, you'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and run down here and try and get this tribal land just so I can continue forward. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be going down the migratory path or not, but you can go ahead and do it if you want. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. I'll see you guys in just a few minutes. And welcome back. So the swarm did its job well. Unfortunately, I walked straight into a 10,000 man stack without paying attention, so I got wiped out down to the last man. But I'm able to piece this guy out, and I can give Wichita some land, get myself some money and some war reps out of this guy. And then this guy over here, I'm going to go ahead and take his tribal land, and I've decided I'm going to go ahead and just continue staying settled. Again, if you want to go for the migratory path, just stick to the tribal land. But either way, I'm taking this guy out completely. And there we go. Now that it is my land, I can go ahead and core this up once I settle here, because then it's connected, and I can go ahead and core this up right there. And now I can go ahead and target Chickasaw over here, because they're also a prime target. Now, if you want to attack other people, feel free. Just be aware that if they do not have any tribal land and you want to be a migratory tribe, just use the humiliate and get show strength off and some humiliations off, because to be honest, free monarch points and your power projection can be very, very, very useful. However, you're going to be delaying your actual expansion. In this case, though, I'm going to go ahead and actually expand, because I'm not going the migratory path. And let's go. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording again. I will see you guys in just a little bit. And welcome back, everybody. So I ended up into another war against Chickasaw, and I took out Pakaha for myself. I gave the Choctaw land to Natchez, and then this guy over here, I wanted the land, but then this guy got there first. So I'm going to go ahead and take his tribal land, humiliate him, and take his war reps, because I don't want to have anybody else getting the land. There we go. Now, here's the thing. I have other expansion I would like to do. Namely, I would like to go down here. But this guy's in my Federation. Well, I can get around that pretty easily. I kick him from the Federation. Now, if you look, I don't have a truce. Yeah, he is now on his own. I just need to wait for my diplomat to come back, and I can attack the ex-member of my Federation without a truce. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and declare this as soon as I can and expand south. Because I can. And again, he had an ally who just abandoned him because that ally is also in my Federation. So I'm going to go ahead and fight this, take care of these guys, and keep pushing south. So I will see you guys, and again, just a little bit. And welcome back. War is over. Able to fully annex him, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, and take his money. Now, if you are going the migratory path, and you're still attacking people, be sure you take as much money as you can. Because you're relying on your government reform here, you have 2 buildings that can speed that up. The ceremonial fire pit, which gives you 0.2, and then the longhouse, which gives you 0.1. Given the fact that you were, or are, making 0.62 a month, that increases the speed at which you gain reforms by 50%. That is huge to get yourself moving, so you're not simply sitting and waiting forever. So go ahead, take that time to deliberately punch your neighbors for money, especially if they have enough allies to actually make it so you're punching a lot of people for money, war reps, trade power, whatever you need to make certain that you can build those 2 buildings as fast as possible. But as you can see, you can move pretty quickly and get yourself expanding. Now, as soon as you make the decision to settle down, whether it is to not flip out of the settle down reform, or you have decided to move out of migratory later on, make sure you focus admin. Especially if you're still going to be adding any tribal land at all. As you can see, it gets expensive fast. As such, in this point, I have enough actual land for me to chill out for a bit. For me to start adding all of this as tribal land. And what I'm going to try and do is wrap around Texas to get to Mexico. The reason why? If I can get to the Mexican gold mines, I know I'll have an economy in the mid-game where I really don't have to even worry about trade. However, I'm also going to try and move myself as much towards Florida as I can, and that is actually the priority. The reason why is while Spain will usually go into Mexico, they don't always go into Mexico. However, Spain, Portugal, England, sometimes even France, will be the ones that colonize Florida. And they do it fairly regularly. Before they really colonize the rest of North America, Florida is targeted because it's in the Caribbean trade node. And the AI is pretty much coded to really like the Caribbean trade node. So if you can get yourself spread out to the south towards Florida, you'll be allowing yourself to reform from feudalism a lot easier because you'll be close. Since you're not able to use I'm now integrating all of the Federation to get this achievement, punching your way there is an option, or simply adding tribal land, whether migratory or otherwise, is another easy way to go. Lastly, if you're not sure about your dumping admin points into it, just don't expand too hard into these guys here. The reason why is they will do it for you. It takes them time, but eventually, Mabila here will expand here, Quetta will go south, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Ishisi, they'll go down here as well, giving you a way to get there yourself just by punching the land out of them. And it's easy to throw down a settle because you're eventually getting tribal development fairly quickly. There's even buildings where you can throw them down to give yourself a little bit of tribal development. So I'm going to go ahead and continue playing to get a little bit further into it to show you things further, but I'll see you guys in a little bit. And welcome back. So I almost forgot to mention something, and that is if you look at your CB, you're unfortunately not able to vassalize anybody when it comes to using your CB. However, if you look at your mission tree, you're required to get subjects. Now, here's the thing. You can release them. And this is an important thing to keep in mind. Because the cost of adding tribal land goes up, not only by the number of tribal provinces you have, but based on the actual provinces that you have, it may be worth it to spit out some of these tags to not only reduce the amount of provinces that you have, making it cheaper for you to add tribal land, but because they will technically be tribes too, capable of adding their own tribal land. So if you want to, go ahead and release them as tags. It can be worth it, but it's, again, a personal call. So again, going to go ahead and pause the recording. I'll see you guys soon. And welcome back, everybody. So as you can tell, it's been a few decades in game time, which means it's been a few hours in real life. However, I had to wait until a European colonized next to me, and thankfully, 80 years in, Portugal finally decided to answer the call. So thank you for Portugal finally allowing me to continue on with my life. Now, I realized during those couple of hours that there was something I forgot to talk about, specifically why I chose to be a settled tribe as opposed to a migratory tribe. So let's go ahead and talk about that now before we continue. Now, if you recall, migratory tribes are able to add tribal land a lot easier because they don't have this plus 200% modifier. And you can see how absurd this is when, given my size of about a quarter to a fifth of America, I go in here to add just one more province, just one, and it's going to cost 2,195 admin points, making add tribal land pretty much a dead feature for me. So why would you want to have this, where it's going to drive the cost up so much that it kind of becomes useless before long? Well, simply put, because it doesn't matter, and you have better things to be focusing on. First off, let's talk about how it doesn't matter. You see, all of this land that I have, I only added tribal land to these 3 provinces myself. Everything else, from Texas to Alabama and Florida, up to Kansas, I took it all. I took it all in a war against other tags. You absolutely can do the same. There is no reason why you need to be adding it yourself. So let other people add the land and pay the admin points, take it into war. You'll be fine. Second off, as I said, you have something more important to be worried about, specifically control over your federation. Now, if you recall, you have strength scores here. Now, if there are people that are stronger than you, it drives your federal cohesion down. If it ever hits 0, whoever's the strongest tag in terms of this strength score automatically takes over the federation. And you want to be in charge of the federation as long as possible, for a couple of reasons. First off, you get to keep the swarm, though everyone does, and you get to keep the goods produced and all the other benefits. However, you are able to prevent them from integrating. If you are no longer in charge, they can integrate the Federation, which means you need to leave it, because you cannot be a part of the Federation if they ever get to this point. More importantly, though, there is actually 2 direct benefits from being in charge of the Federation. Specifically, you have 10% increased morale of armies and more diplomatic reputation. And if you look at the strength score, everyone else in the Federation is either a 1 or a 2 province minor. I have a substantial advantage over everybody. The reason why is simple. You have a base of 10,000 manpower, and then you have the capital, which has some buildings and some development, maybe an advisor, but I have a bunch of other provinces, adding a couple hundred here, a couple thousand there, meaning mine just keeps going up and up and up, meaning I will never lose control over this federation. People may leave it, but I will never lose control to anybody else, meaning it is safe for me to simply ignore it once I get these 7 and move on. So you should probably be a settled tribe too, because it'll be easier to control the federation, and you really won't be adding any tribal land yourself. Now let's go ahead and talk about the rest of it. Now this next topic is actually something that I misunderstood about how this works until this run. I did 50 runs through and I thought I understood it, but this turns it right on its head. You see, I believed that in order to settle a province, you had to be adjacent to it. So for instance, this province, if it was my tribal land, I could not settle. The reason why is I did not have this or any other province that's next to it as settled, but I could settle this one because it actually is bordering an actual province. That does not seem to be how it works. You see, if you look at my colonial range, I have quite a bit of colonial range, all the way up into the northeastern seaboard. This is because I'm tech level 4. I have 160 range, but I start off with 60. But here's the thing. If you look right there, I have some tribal land that I can settle. I have no land border with it. I have no sea border with it. I should not be able to if this was based on simple adjacency. But more important than that, if you look at this map again, you'll notice I have colonial range right here because it's right next to a land border. But right here, I can still settle this even though it's outside of my colonial range. I'm not certain exactly what the criteria is, but do not assume it is simply adjacency. You may be giving up potential expansion paths for yourself, such as reaching up into that northeastern seaboard, allowing you to take control over the entire continent before the Europeans arrive, simply by juggling between your truce timers. So just be aware that you might be able to reach somewhere and try and grab it, because if you can, perfect. Take full advantage. Just needed to point that out because it's something I learned just by making this. Let's go ahead and move on. Now, the last things to talk about are reforming your way out of being a tribe, the catch-up mechanics that are available to you, and lastly, tips and tricks that'll make your life a little bit easier moving forward. First things first, reforming your way out of being a tribe. Now, if you are Aztecs or Mayans or Inti in South America, you reform yourself out of being a tribe by reforming your religion, by picking the options in there, and then being adjacent to, or basically neighboring, anyone that has an institution. That's how that works for them. They do not have government reforms at the start until they do those things. You, however, as a North American tribe, have government reforms, and this is how you stop being a tribe. In order to stop being a tribe, you have 3 basic options with 5 choices amongst them, so let's go ahead and cover them. The first option is become a horde. To become a horde, you do not need any institution, but what you do need to do is get to tech level 6 in military and still be a migratory tribe, so you cannot be settled in any way. So you have to remain the one province minor, which may be unable to maintain a federation, which may be too weak to attack anybody, meaning you're kind of sitting for quite a while, but you get to have a whole lot of fun burning down the new world. And on top of that, you have to get to military tech 6. The problem with that is that military tech 6 is the same monarch power that you use to migrate. So if you are able to expand, you're going to be migrating a lot. And if you are migrating a lot, that's slowing down you getting to tech 6 and becoming a horde. So it's a lot of juggling you have to do, but if you want to go down that path, feel free. It is pretty fun being a horde and burning everything down across the entire continent. Next is the second general choice that has 3 individual choices among them. And that is, if you allow yourself to embrace feudalism, to let it spread through your country and then embrace it, you can become a monarchy, a republic, or a theocracy. You have the complete free reign to choose any 3. And between the 3 of them, one is pretty overpowered, and that is the republic. The reason why is since you get to remain being a totemist, whenever your ruler dies, you can add whatever his personality trait was. In this case, I had a discipline guy alive at one point. I can add him to the totem, permanently giving myself 5% increased discipline. So when this guy dies, I'll get minus 2 years of separatism permanently, even if he's dead. As a republic, you get to re-elect your ruler every 3 to 5 years, depending on what reforms you choose. Whenever somebody's not re-elected, though, they are treated as if they died. So I can end up rolling a yearly Republican tradition ruler and add him to the totem. Or if I'm wanting to, I can simply constantly fish for, since I have the discipline guy, the morale guy, and the army tradition guy, making my army Space Marines running around, giving me all the monarch points I can possibly need, which is incredibly strong. On top of which, all of your rulers will always have the positive version of traits. So, pretty nice. The other option, however, is, other than becoming a monarchy, republic, or theocracy by your choice, is the third option, the third way, right here, of trading with foreigners. The way this works is you will embrace whatever government reform that the European tag that is bordering you has embraced. So in this case, since Portugal is a monarchy, I will become a monarchy. If it was the Pope instead, I'd become a theocracy. So if in order for me to do this and become a republic, I'd have to hope that some republic somewhere actually colonizes next to me, which is almost impossible. So this is basically a better option for you if you're willing to give up the overpoweredness of Totemist Republic. The advantage of doing this, though, is you don't need to wait and embrace any institution. You automatically embrace all institutions that tag has. So in this case, if you look at Portugal down here, they've embraced feudalism and Renaissance and colonialism, which means if I select this option, I am instantly going to embrace all three. If Portugal, however, had printing press, I'd get that too. So if I was only now getting around to having Portugal next to me, and let's say it was 1499, instead of embracing it then, wait until they have colonialism embraced and then click the button. So be aware of what is coming up if an institution's about to spawn, because if you can wait a little bit and then click this, it'll be better for you. That is how you reform out of being a tribe into one of the normal government types. Either horde, you have your choice, or whatever happens to be next to you, but you don't have to worry about any institutions that they've embraced. Next, let's talk about the catch-up mechanics. Whenever you would reform as a tribe in the past, you would get 80% of whatever the tech level is of the person that you were formed off of. So since Portugal has tech level 8, 10, and 10, you would normally be getting 6, 8, and 8. Since my tech level is 5, 4, 5, I'd be getting quite a jump, meaning I'd only have to play catch-up to that last 20%. Meaning it's a great catch-up mechanic, so you're not that far behind as long as you're prepared for the Europeans. That's not how this works anymore. Instead, as you can see, I was 5, 4, 5. I'm going to reform and become monarchy. I am still at 5, 4, 5. I have the institutions now, and I can go ahead and embrace tech. The problem is that I am starting off from the backwards position. So if you know it's about to be that point where the Europeans are going to start showing up, that is the point when you need to start balancing out and accumulating as many monarch points as you can to play catch up with your tech. Because you don't want to be 4 military techs behind Portugal, for instance, who is going to probably want your land. Because if they see that you're that weak, they might attack. And if they attack, your only option and your only best hope is that you can take out their landing zones and stop them from any kind of landing, which you may or may not do 4 techs behind. So try and save up as much monarch power as you can, so when it's time to reform, you're reformed and you're caught up and you're ready to fight. Now the final thing to talk about is a very simple strategy that should make your life a whole lot easier. You see, Portugal is a dire threat to my existence. They are 4 militechs ahead of me, and on top of that, they desperately want pretty much a quarter of my country, and really will have no problem in getting it. On top of that, if I wanted to remove them, there's no way I can win that fight. I am so desperately outnumbered and outgunned in tech, there's no possible way I can win. So how do you remove yourself from such a dangerous situation? Simply put, you remove Portugal from it. You see, Portugal will be able to defend the area so long as they are there. However, being a member of the New World, you are able to attack colonial nations without their overlords getting involved. So in the case of Portugal, they also have Caribas over here. Now, let's say I could actually see them and declare on them directly. Because they exist and they are a colonial tag, I can attack them and neither Portugal, nor England, nor Castile will get involved until Portugal enforces peace upon you. And then it'll tell you you're being told make peace or they'll get involved. And if they do, they can jump in and bring in all their allies. Now, the AI will do that in the current patch, but it takes them between 6 months and 2 years to do so. So the simple answer is you get your army over to Caribas beforehand, as much as you can, and you build up a navy that can blast open a capital fort. By doing so, you can instantly siege down a capital fort with a lot of casualties, siege down the rest of the country as quickly as possible, and peace them out before Portugal can even get involved. By doing so, suddenly you've removed not only the colonial nation, but Portugal's involvement if they have nowhere else to colonize. The Caribbean is slightly more difficult to do that in, but you can if you're on every island. Now here's the thing. If you look at the Mexico region, they need 5 provinces. They have 1, 2, 3, 4. They do not have enough to actually form a colonial nation. All you do is you simply sell them one of your provinces. You'll probably only get 0 ducats for it, but if it makes them form a colonial nation that you can then attack and wipe off the map in the day, it's worth doing so. Especially since the capital actually doesn't have anyone in it to defend it within the first month. So become a normal tag, get a claim on the provinces down here, form the colonial nation, and declare immediately. Once you do that, you can wipe them out, and Portugal is gone, so they have no real desire upon your land. They might, but usually not. But on top of that, they'd have to land troops, and that makes it substantially harder for Portugal to actually survive that. The last way it protects you will be dependent upon where they're at and who it is. So let's say Portugal, after being pushed out of Mexico, decides to colonize Florida. Now there's 5 provinces here, so they form a colonial nation. It is in the colonial Eastern American region, which means it's this colonial region, not the Caribbean, nowhere else, just here. Why is this important? Because since they're Catholic, that will give them the Treaty of Tordesillas over this entire region. It'll give, for example, Norway the entire Canada region, preventing any other Catholic from really colonizing there. Which means if I can push their colonial nation out, no real Catholic nation will come back because it remains even if the colony is destroyed. So I just need to allow the Catholics to colonize there, and then I only have to worry about Protestants, which really isn't that big of a threat. Because by the time the Protestants show up, I should have most of this secured. I really should. And that's basically the strategy. If you need to, sell them a province, give them a colonial nation, and then rip them apart. Use the fact that they are going to form really weak colonial nations that you can blast down in a day to your advantage and rush them down. And with that, you should be more than capable of keeping the Europeans at bay. Eventually, you'll have imperialism spawn, and you will have the weight of America behind you. And that's the time when you decide you're going to sail over to Europe, and you're going to colonize them. And you're going to take out Anjou and get your achievement done. This is going to depend entirely on when you feel you're capable of doing that. So I can't tell you when, but basically at least wait until imperialism so you're not no-see-being onto the other side of the planet. Because you don't necessarily have to. Just be sure you build a large enough navy and it survives long enough to at least try and land on the area, and you might want to invade Iceland first. But with all of that, you guys should be more than good to go with QuizQuiz and pretty much any other North American tribe. If you guys like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'll definitely be making more of it. If you want to see a particular mechanic done, let me know in a comment below. I'm definitely looking for more ideas, and I'd love to hear them. So please, let me know. And I wanted to say thank you in particular to everybody that subscribed. I never thought I would make it to 100 subscribers, let alone be nearing 1,000. That's kind of freaky to me. But at the same time, I really do appreciate it because it tells me you guys are liking the content and it's helping you out. So thank you so much for subscribing. It really does matter to me. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.